President Trump, did President Biden leave you a letter?
He may have. Wait. Don't they leave it in the desk? I don't know. Oh,
What's in there?
thank you, Peter. It could have been years before we found it.
President Trump there revealing the text of that letter former President Biden left him in the Oval Office in a Fox News exclusive. This just in. All right, hello and welcome everyone. I'm Sandra Smith in New York, and Brett, it's great to have you here today.
Hey, Sandra, good to be with you. I'm Brett Baer in Washington. John Roberts is off today. This is America Reports. You know, President Trump previously described this letter as very nice, even inspirational, as he now reveals to the public what President Biden wrote for the very first time.
Trump detailing President Biden's best wishes for both the president and his family as he shares hope for prosperity, peace, and grace over the next 4 years.
Peter Doocy has that exclusive. He's live from the White House lawn with more on that. Peter, good afternoon. What was in the letter?
Good afternoon. Brett, this letter that we know President Trump did not open right away, I had a chance to hold it in my hand after he took it out of the envelope and review it. It's in President Biden's cursive handwriting. It's on his old letterhead that says Joseph R. Biden, Jr., President of the United States, with the seal. And we can share with you now exclusively what else it says. He wrote, "Dear President Trump, as I take leave of this sacred office, I wish you and your family all the best in the next 4 years. The American people and people around the world look to this House for steadiness in the inevitable storms of history. And my prayer is that in the coming years will be a time of prosperity, peace, and grace for our nation. May God bless you and guide you as he has blessed and guided our beloved country since our founding. Joe Biden, 1/2025. It was written on one side of stationery. There was probably a little bit of room for him to add something else if he chose to, but that is all that he sent, and it really puts an end or puts a button on the relationship between these two guys. We know that President Biden warned for a long time that he thought President Trump was unfit for the office. None of that is in this letter. It's actually, as President Trump described last night, inspirational. And of course, this whole story of the letter started on Monday, just a few minutes after the president sat back at the Resolute desk for the first time in 4 years, and this happened.
President Trump, did President Biden leave you a letter?
He may have. Wait. Don't they leave it in the desk? I don't know. Oh,
What's in there?
thank you, Peter. It could have been years before we found it. Wow. Thank you.
What does it say on the outside?
Maybe we should all read it together.
Let's read it.
Well, maybe I'll read it first and then make that
That sounds
determination.
great.
Peter, thank you very much. I may not have seen this for months.
Happy to help with the passing of the torch.
I did. I left him one in the desk just like this.
So we didn't get to read it all together on Monday. We did get to read it all together on Wednesday around lunchtime. We know the president is going to continue signing some executive orders today while he waits for Congress to figure out how to put together a spending bill. They still want one big bill with all of his priorities stuffed in there. And also while he waits for the Senate to try to figure out how to overcome Democratic objections to key national security related confirmations, including the CIA Director Ratcliffe. Brett.
Peter Doocy live on the North Lawn. Peter, thanks. Sandra, it is quite something, that handover of power, passing the torch. We've seen it time and time again, and this is one that is coming out public. There have been others. President Biden did not put President Trump's letter out public, found in the Resolute desk.
And thank goodness Peter Doocy was there to remind him of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think people, the American people, appreciate this moment. They appreciate that the exchanging of the letters and the, passing of the torch, if you will, and the tradition, really, right, Brett?
Yeah, I mean, it's important, and it's what we talked about on Inauguration Day. It's just a sense that the country can move on. Meantime, you've got Tom Homan, who we just saw, who is doing a lot of activity. There's, this is like Fast and Furious, like drinking from a fire hose here.
Absolutely. We've got a lot more news to get to, Brett. More breaking news from the White House. Speaking of which, an official tells Fox News that the Pentagon will be sending 1,500 active duty troops to the southern border by the end of this month. We expect the Trump administration to formally announce that later today. The source says the troops will be at different locations along the border and will serve in the same roles as troops already there. That means providing aerial reconnaissance, data entry, training, vehicle maintenance, detection and monitoring, and some other logistical support roles. 2,500 U.S. troops are already at the border.
We've been working up the target list. There was some discussion about Chicago because the Pacific operational plan was released. So we had to look at and reevaluate, does this raise officer safety concerns? And it does. But we've addressed that, and teams are all effective today.
So Chicago's bracing for potential ICE raids as the Trump administration cracks down on the city designated as ground zero for deportations. Democrat leaders there are urging undocumented and illegal migrants to learn their rights, they say. Garrett Tenney is live in the Windy City with that story. Good afternoon, Garrett.
Hey, Brett, good afternoon to you. The Trump administration is looking to make a big statement by carrying out a massive deportation operation here in the Windy Sanctuary City. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker says his office has heard that ICE is targeting as many as 2,000 people, violent criminals who are here illegally. The exact timing of when this operation will happen is now up in the air after details were leaked over the weekend. But Border Czar Tom Homan says agents in other cities have already arrested more than 300 violent criminal aliens since President Trump took office.
Some of them were murderers, some of them were rapists, some of them raped a child, some were sexual assault of a child. So ICE is doing their job, and they're prioritizing just as the president said they would. We're going to keep looking for the worst first. And look, the sanctuary cities, I've said this many times, it led us into the jail.
Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and his progressive allies on the city council have repeatedly blocked efforts to change the city's sanctuary policies, including one just last week that would have allowed police to work with ICE only in cases of violent criminals. They have spent the past week preparing to fight ICE's mass deportation efforts by canvassing Latino neighborhoods to pass out these flyers telling folks to not open their doors and to remain silent if ICE agents show up.
We are not going to allow fear to live in this moment and to win in this city, which is exactly why you see we strategically have every single level of government here today telling people, you have rights, and as long as we are here, we're going to protect your constitutional rights.
Governor J.B. Pritzker continues to say violent criminals who are undocumented should be deported, but he is also not pushing for changes to his state sanctuary policies that would help ICE to do that.
If there are violent criminals who have been convicted of violent crimes, who are undocumented, they are supposed to be deported. That is the law of the United States and has been for quite a long time. I don't want them in my state. I don't want them in the country. If you're going to commit crimes and you're undocumented, you don't deserve to stay in this country.
The Trump Justice Department put sanctuary leaders on notice today by instructing federal prosecutors to investigate any officials who try to resist or stop the administration's immigration enforcement plans. Brett?
Garrett Tenney live in Chicago. Garrett, thanks. Sandra?
All right, let's bring in New York City Council Minority Leader and National Forum of Republican Mayors and Council Members Chairman Joe Borelli. Joe, thanks for being here. As Brett was mentioning earlier, at the pace at which we've seen this administration acting, particularly when it comes to the border, like drinking from a fire hose, this is Tom Homan explaining what's already been done in just the first 2 days of Trump's presidency.
Because in 2 days, the last 24 hours, total apprehensions on the southwest border, 766. Compare that to the 10,000 to 12,000 Biden had at one time. CBP-1 releases, 0. CHNV, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela releases, 0. Total of 766 across the entire southwest border. That is a game changer.
And as he continues to remind the American public, those that are prioritized are those that they see as public safety threats, and that is what they are sticking to. Your thoughts on how this is going so far?
Well, this is welcome news, and it's not surprising. Donald Trump did over 100 rallies over the course of this campaign. He read from a teleprompter every single time, telling us exactly what he was going to do on day one. Promises kept the moment he took the oath of office, and this is the net result. Now here in a city like New York, we are essentially bracing ourselves for some ICE deportation proceedings. It appears that the NYPD is not totally totally cooperating, but they're also not resisting. They're not going to interfere with the work that Tom Homan and his ICE team are doing. That's a huge step forward. The mayor is sort of under the gun with sanctuary city laws here, but where they can find some avenues of cooperation, we are seeing that in play.
It's such a great point. And to your point, they have to worry about their political futures as well. And when you look at our Fox News polling, this is a priority for so many voters. And we saw that leading up to the election. In our Fox News poll, when asked on their preferred U.S. policy on illegal immigrants, 30%, almost a third, said deport all of them. Nearly 60% said deport if they are charged with crimes. And again, that is where this administration and Tom Homan continue to focus their efforts out of the gate. What's happening in New York City and Mayor Adams on cooperating with federal partners? This is what he said at a news conference on Tuesday. Listen.
We're going to continue to collaborate with all of our federal partners when it comes down to illegal behaviors. I was very clear for almost a year and a half now. Those who commit violent crimes in our city have violated their right to be in our city and in our country. And we're going to continue to collaborate with ICE around criminality.
So how would you say that collaboration is going thus far?
Look, based on those poll numbers you cited and the fact that every single one of New York's 5 counties shifted hard towards Trump, past the number in 2020, passed the number in 2016. I think Mayor Adams has read the tea leaves and realizes that enough is enough. New Yorkers are sick of it. So we do have task forces where NYPD cooperates with federal law enforcement agencies on things like gangs and sex trafficking and other big crimes. Those task forces are still operating today, and they're going after gangs, which in many cases are run by illegal migrants from Venezuela and elsewhere.
I want to also play out this sound from Homan. This was on this program on Tuesday this week. He basically, just yesterday, basically making the case that the sanctuary cities, if they continue to choose to not cooperate, that things could backfire on them. Here's Homan.
Against public safety threats. Those who are in the country illegally that's been convicted or arrested for a serious crime. But let me be clear. It's not only public safety threats that will be arrested. Because in sanctuary cities, we're not allowed to get that public safety threat in the jail, which means we got to go to the neighborhood and find him. And when we find him, he may be with others. And unlike the last administration, we're not going to tell ICE officers not to arrest an illegal alien. So if they find others, they'll be arrested. So sanctuary cities are going to get exactly what they don't want: more agents in the neighborhood and more collateral arrests.
And now this New York Post headline, worried migrants are fleeing the New York City shelters as these Trump ICE raids loom. It is better to leave before, apparently, is what they are saying and being told in some cases. Joe, final thought on all of that.
Homan is exactly right? The system before Trump's first term, before all the nonsensical sanctuary city laws were passed, New York City Department of Corrections would release criminals, people who were arrested for horrible and heinous crimes, and they'd respect ICE detainers and hand them over. Those persons were not just deported, they went through the immigration court system, they had their day in court, and for the most part, they were adjudicated to be gone and to leave. That's the best system possible. What Tom Homan has to do now, because of those prohibitions, is actually has to go door to door and conduct their own investigations to find people, whether they're, strong criminals, or they just happen to be the person living with someone who's a murderer or rapist, and they're all going to be lumped together, unfortunately.
Yeah, he has a huge task at hand.
Big job.
Says he's up to the job, and he's already at it. So we'll keep tracking it and see how it goes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Joe.
Please get the hell out of here. Please get out of here. Take off your mask. Why don't you take off your mask? Please get out of here.
Don't touch me, please.
Okay, get out.
Excuse me?
Get out of class.
Well, the spring semester is starting at Columbia University, and so is the anti-Semitism there, apparently. What is the school doing to stop it, and is it enough? A student at that school weighs in.
All right. Plus, President Trump about to make good on one of his biggest campaign promises. Fox News contributor Mary Catherine Ham on the deadline to eliminate DEI in the federal government.
This is a big deal. Merit. Our country is going to be based on merit again. Can you believe it?
Democrats have been very clear about our approach to President Trump's nominees. We will neither rubber stamp nominees we feel are grossly unqualified, nor will we reflexively oppose nominees that deserve serious consideration.
I don't really understand the objection to Mr. Ratcliffe. Senator Schumer stood here yesterday and talked about how we're going to cooperate on highly qualified, capable nominees with integrity, which John Ratcliffe is.
All right, frustration growing on Capitol Hill as Democrats delay confirmations for some of President Trump's cabinet picks, including CIA nominee John Ratcliffe, who cleared a bipartisan committee vote 14-3. Senior national correspondent Aisha Hasni is live on the Hill for us. She's got more on all of that and where this goes next. Aisha.
Hey, Sandra, good afternoon to you. Look, Republicans are saying to Democrats, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. And right now it appears it's going to be the hard way, which could mean that they have to stay and work the weekend. So things got very, very tense on the Senate floor last night when Connecticut Democrat Senator Chris Murphy basically objected to a time agreement on the CIA director nominee John Ratcliffe. And that essentially forced Republicans to abide by the 30-hour debate rule. Sandra, what that means is it ties up floor time for any other nominee. They can't do anything right now. It's like a train station with one track. The other trains can't come in if the first train hasn't left the station yet. GOP leader John Thune was fuming at Democrats.
Do we want to vote on these folks on Tuesday or vote on them on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? Because that's what we're going to do. This can be easy or this can be hard.
Now, President Trump has asked John Thune and Speaker Mike Johnson about recess appointments at the Oval Office when they all met yesterday. Trump can circumvent the House and Senate and call for Congress to recess after a 10-day break. That would give him the ability to appoint all of his nominees at once. However, Sandra, that mechanism would basically torpedo the Senate's advice and consent rule. And some senators say they don't think it's time to use the nuclear option.
I don't know that we're at a point where that's even being discussed. I think everybody involved, and I suspect even the White House, although I won't purport to speak for another branch of government, would prefer to just get them done the regular way.
So, Sandra, as of this moment, it does not appear the House and Senate are going to adjourn to do those recess appointments. But again, it's only Wednesday, and President Trump has plenty of time to weigh in on this. Sandra?
Okay, adding to the drama, Aisha Hasni on the Hill for us. All right, Brett, I know you've been keeping track of all of this. President Trump says he intends to make as many as 1,000 recess appointments. But the details of this are going to be interesting as we get close to the weekend here. Thune obviously not happy with the way this is playing out.
Yeah. So here's the deal. I mean, right now, it doesn't seem like it's in the cards that either the House or the Senate will formally adjourn. And one of them has to do it under Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution. If one of them does it and the other one doesn't, the president could step in and say, you're both adjourned, and we're going to do these recess appointments. Right now, they don't have the votes in the House. The Senate doesn't want to do it. But think about this. There are 112 nominations right now that are up for confirmation. Of them, formally, 68 have been put forward. If they continue to do what they're doing now, like the timing, the 30-hour thing, it would be until late March until just those 68 get approved. And we're talking some big jobs like OMB, Homeland Security. You're talking about a lot of big jobs. So where is the anger and how does it build? And is there pressure from President Trump on the House to formally adjourn and then do what Aisha talked about, these recess appointments? I think it's something to watch. It's not there yet, but it is definitely something to watch.
I could slow things down. At the pace they've been going, it would dramatically change the way things have been going, right, Brett?
Oh, it would. And listen, he could make the argument, I need a government, but it's never been done this way, and it would be challenged in the courts right away, I'm sure.
We will keep track of it and keep watching it.
Beb.
We had the most ambitious, action-oriented day of any administration in history. We ended destructive DEI mandates across the federal government and returned our country to a merit-based system and a common sense system.
President Trump there, all federal DEI staff preparing to be put on paid leave in just a few hours, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, as President Trump makes good on his promise to dismantle DEI-related programs in the workplace. Let's bring in Mary Catherine Ham, Fox News contributor. Mary Catherine, I'm sweeping. You've got this 5 p.m. deadline. They essentially would be on paid leave, as well as take down any web pages that deal with DEI. What do you make of this and kind of making good on this promise?
Well, a theme of how Trump was elected was the question for the American people and voters: does this work for you, or are you being worked over? And in the case of DEI programs, I think we have seen a lot of evidence that people are being worked over with this kind of thing. I like the way that they're doing this. There's a lot of indication in these executive orders that someone has been working on these for a long time, that they have thought through them, that they've had very good lawyers writing the language. The last Trump administration was surprised it became the last Trump administration, and some of their executive orders and some of their work reflected that. That is not the case this time around. He also has public support for things like this. I think the fact he called them discrimination programs, and that's what in actuality they become. It is a reversal of the idea of honoring everyone equally and for merit. Instead, you end up inherently making decisions by race and gender. You end up inherently discriminating against people, and that's not what people want. I do think they will have to be careful, and I can see they're keeping an eye out for this, that each one of these organizations will disappear into the background of an agency and never really go away. It's also interesting that because of Biden's original executive order asking for these equity programs, everybody put in writing for the former president what they had done so great. So now he has it in writing what has been done, and he can go find it.
Right, and there's part of an order here that they say if the web page is named something else or the program's named something else, you need to come forward with that in 10 days. Chris Rufo, one of the anti-DEI guys, said the move marks a stunning reversal of fortune from just 4 years ago when Black Lives Matter, critical race theory, and DEI seemed unstoppable. The forces of left-wing radicalism are on the defensive, and the forces of colorblind equality are on the move. If you look at our latest poll on this back in December, but how important is it that Donald Trump focuses on ending DEI programs? Extremely very 53%. So to your point, there is support for this.
Well, people are very affectionate toward the idea of judging by the content of one's character and not the color of one's skin. That's something that's been a mainstay, and the left sort of flipped it on its head, gave it this new name that sounded sort of innocuous, but ends up spending a bunch of money to do the opposite, and by the way, doesn't work at all. If you see the studies coming out of universities for actually creating diversity or equity or inclusion, it sometimes does the opposite by turning off the kind of people who are in favor of a more traditional classical liberal sense.
You just saw Aisha's story about the slowdown by Democrats on these confirmations. Are we, do you think, getting ready for a car crash here?
I hope not. I don't think that's what people voted for. People voted for sweeping change. They voted for Trump to be in charge. I think they would like to have him largely have his choices in that scenario. They've shown that they can do a 99-0 approval of Senator Marco Rubio. I'm sure they can get to closer votes on other people.
Last thing, President Trump in that Q&A in the Oval Office as he's signing executive orders. It was almost like an Easter egg hunt. He finds the letter from President Biden released today to Peter Doocy. Among the things President Biden said, I wish you and your family all the best in the next 4 years, then that the coming years will be a time of prosperity, peace, and grace for our nation. It is a tradition. Just your thoughts on that moment.
I think it's a kind and classy letter. I have plenty of problems with Biden and his policies. This letter is not among the acts I have an issue with. I do think some of his supporters might be confused by such a nice letter to Hitler. It's sort of strange.
Mary Catherine, as always, thank you.
Thank you.
Sandra.
All right, thank you, Brett. Just getting some information here. Getting word from the Department of Emergency Communications there in Nashville of a confirmed school shooting. A call came in around 11 a.m. Central Time, 12 p.m. Eastern, so just about an hour and a half ago, that there was a shooting in the cafeteria at a high school there, Antioch High School. At least 3 people are confirmed to have gunshot wounds at this time. We're just getting the initial information from there. The shooter then turned the gun on himself. This is just the early information that we are getting there. The Metro Nashville Police Department couldn't immediately provide the conditions of those who were shot. So we're waiting on an update on that. But the shooter's believed to have shot 2 students before shooting himself. And they could not confirm immediately whether the shooter was a student. So again, we're waiting more information on this. This is a shot from a few moments ago of that high school there. We'll get more information on this. Obviously, you can see students gathering. They were evacuated. Eventually, there will be a reunification. This is just an early word confirmation of that school shooting there. We'll bring you more from Nashville as we get it. All right, now this. Business leaders feeling optimistic about President Trump's return to the White House while also preparing to handle his flurry of executive orders. That's Larry Kudlow tapping the desk, excited to be here. He is here and will join us after the break on all of that.
He looks very excited. Plus, snow in New Orleans. Snow in New Orleans. Rare winter storm.
Truly, we made a memory with this trip.
Our poor Uber guy's he's like, do you really want to go to the airport? I said, where am I supposed to go? I'm literally homeless.
There you go. Snow in New Orleans, a rare winter storm wreaking havoc across the southern U.S. Fox Weather's Brandy Campbell live in the Big Easy to tell us more. Brandy?
Hey, Brett, this was a historic storm for Louisiana. Our first ever blizzard warning. We actually had blizzard conditions here on the lakefront of New Orleans as the city is a little bit crippled by the snow that still remains on the roads. We're finding families here on the lakefront finding a way to enjoy it all. We'll have that coming up.
Vanilla ice to start your day. New Orleans among several southern cities hit by an extremely rare snowstorm. The Big Easy brought to a standstill because of the storm, allowing this guy to skate and play ice hockey on the frozen streets. Fox Weather correspondent Brandy Campbell live in New Orleans. Brandy, how's the city handling this storm?
Hey, Brett. Well, look, after 8 inches of snow fell over the city of New Orleans, things have been, like you said, brought to a standstill. It's the most snow to fall in New Orleans since 1895. It's been a long time coming. Take a look at this footage, though. It's showing what the roads are like here in the area. This is what we're dealing with in this region. Interstates, they are still shut down. Roads in New Orleans, as you can see, still covered with snow as the state and local cities work to start clearing the roads after contracting outside help. The airport, they also announced recently that all flights are canceled today, but they might attempt to let a few in tonight. Meanwhile, families, they're just taking advantage of this still moment. No one, or most people out of work, kids out of school. So you can see they're finding the one place where there's a hill. You have the levee right here along Lake Pontchartrain. So to talk with us about all of the fun that's being had, I have Callan and his dad here. Callan, you are getting to see a historical amount of snowfall in New Orleans. What does it mean to see this and be able to have fun?
Throw snowballs at my dad and don't go to school, and you didn't have to go somewhere else and you could just stay home.
Yeah, it was fun, right? What did you think when you saw the snow coming down?
A miracle.
A miracle. I'll take this. This is something so rare for New Orleans and something that might not happen for over 100 years. It's been over 100 years since we've seen this. Now, I know you're going to give us an example of what everybody's doing out here, right? Mm-hmm. All right, let's see what you got, Callan. He's going to go ahead and sled down this hill. Go ahead. 3, 2, 1. Woo! There we go. Brett, look, this is something unheard of in New Orleans. I'm from New Orleans, and I've never been able to do that. We've had snow before, back in 08 and 09, but it was nothing like this. This is something some kids may be seeing for the first time in their lives. So a great moment for New Orleanians, but again, it is, causing havoc out here. Once this happens, the city kind of shuts down. Brett?
Yeah. Brandy, thank you so much. Go do some sledding, grab a beignet, have a good day. All right, thank you.
I think it's more important that the general economy feels a little bit of relief on regulation across the board. The ability to get deals done. American companies can now go out domestically and around the world and be the kings that they're supposed to be.
But the bureaucracy, the whole American public knows the bureaucracy. It is extraordinary, and it's been allowed to blossom like a cancer all throughout our country.
Top business leaders expressing their optimism as President Trump returns to the White House with a promise to loosen Biden-era regulations on businesses. More than loosen, I mean, some cases completely roll back. Larry Kudlow is here, host of Kudlow on Fox Business. I say that not kidding. I mean, that's the case with some of these regulations. He's doing away with some of them altogether to let businesses do what they need to do.
I heard, except for a handful of CEOs, there's nobody at Davos. It's a complete ghost town. Culturally, politically, economically. I heard everybody left Davos and went to Mar-a-Lago. And that's where they are now.
Look,
metaphorically speaking,
you're partly
of course.
joking, I'm
Metaphorically speaking, of course.
But to your point, though, I mean, the conversations are here. The action, the activity is here, and it is here right now. I pulled this for you. Our team, our awesome team, dug it up. This is Mary Erdoes, okay? This is where the whole talk of the corporations they're overnight, they're assembling war rooms, and they're in there trying to figure out how to handle all the changes that are coming their way, right? Almost some of the headlines read like this was a negative thing that they had to deal with. Not the case. This is Mary Erdoes. She's an executive at JP Morgan. Listen here.
I think the last 24 hours are just showing that there's going to be a lot of changes that we all have to digest. At JP Morgan, we have a war room set up to analyze and evaluate each and every one of these. So they've been up all night and are working on it. And I think that, you know, time will tell. But a lot of this is exactly what you would do to have a very pro-business environment. You look at just the return to office for government workers, and so you just say to yourself, that's exactly what this whole panel has already done. Thank God the U.S. government has done it, and hopefully that'll keep us ahead of other governments in the world so we can continue to compete.
Whoa, that's big bank, big corporation USA.
It's about time. It's about, I mean, look. This is going to be the most pro-business administration in I don't know how long, maybe in history. There was a great quote from Stanley Druckenmiller about how Biden's were the most anti-business administration. Trump's going to be pro-business. This is what business wants. We have to produce in this country. We want prosperity. We want the workforce empowered. We don't want government bureaucrats empowered. Look what Trump has done. In basically 24 hours, the first 24 hours, but you can call it 48 hours if you like, he has transformed policy with executive orders, and he is stretching the limits, but I believe he is inside his own legal limits. He has stopped the culture wars of DEI. He has stopped the war against fossil fuels with the climate change. He is defending our borders. He is closing our borders. He is using tariffs to implement his policies. He's about to have a big, beautiful bill that's going to include big tax cuts as well as deregulation. He is disempowering the regulators and the alphabet agencies, one after another after another. He has changed the entire landscape in his first 24 hours. Now, these companies may have been asleep at the switch. Maybe they didn't expect this to happen. He's been talking about it for years, and he's had plenty of time to reflect on it, and he's just following through on what he promised during the campaign. Promises made, promises kept. He wants prosperity and growth. And look, the other thing is, he is the quintessential optimist. Read that inaugural speech. You have to sort of read it. He is so optimistic and so positive when he talks about a golden era for the United States. He's talking about across the board, in our culture, in our schools, in our economy, in our workforce. He's not going by identities. He's going by income. He wants to raise the wages and the affordability of everybody in this country. This is a complete revolution that he is doing, and he's using the instrument of executive order. So that means what? As a businessman, you don't want to wait. If you want to do something to help your company, you don't want to wait a year or 2 years. You want to get it done now. That's what he's saying. I want it done today. And that's exactly what he's doing. He is, by the way, taking out a lot of the bureaucracy through executive orders. That's a very important point. Anybody that resists the kind of pro-business, pro-economic growth change, anybody that still clings to these culture wars, they're out. They're gone. They're history, you know.
He's making that very apparent. That is for sure.
I don't know that this Davos crowd gets it. I mean, what that woman from JP Morgan said, it was very good. I hope that's true. But the real action has been at Mar-a-Lago. People in both political parties, right? I mean, just here, one more. Silicon Valley. the techie crowd. Were they for or against Trump the last 4 years, the last 8 years? They were against Trump. Now they are in his corner. Now they went to his inauguration.
Things have changed, that is
now
for
they're
sure.
putting together this AI revolution for trillions of dollars of private sector investment, and this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Larry.
He has transformed the country, and he will make good on his promises. And
That is the conversation I want to
most fun
continue
I've
to have
ever
with
had.
you, is sort of how you're going to benchmark the changes and the performance, and where you'll be looking for to gauge how the policies and the rolling back of the regulations, how his performance will be
Order,
judged.
electricity,
That's next time.
economy, wages, affordability. Let's not make this any harder than it needs to be. He's just laying it right out.
Larry, thank you very much. Great to see you, and great stuff in D.C. All right.
We're giving you an inside scoop on Columbia University's normalization of genocide. Why are we like even listening to this? Like a nobody wants to hear this.
Columbia condemning mass protesters for disrupting a Jewish professor's class. So is the school doing enough to handle anti-Semitism? We'll ask a student next. You now on that school shooting we brought you earlier. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation is now involved in Antioch, Tennessee, where there's a confirmed school shooting. Call came in around 11 a.m. Central Time that there was this shooting in the cafeteria at Antioch High School. We're told that at least 3 people have gunshot wounds. The shooter is one of them, turning the gun on himself. So there's 3 people wounded. They have been taken to a nearby hospital. School officials are asking parents not to go to the high school to pick up their children. They're going to the hospital, Sandra. The FBI is working with the Metro Nashville Police Department and now the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. But again, 3 wounded. You remember back in March of 23, the shooter killed 3 9-year-olds and 3 adults at that private Christian elementary school in the city, the Covenant School. This another incident, Sandra, that we're trying to get more information on.
Yeah, and this is a public school, grades 9 through 12. It's southeast Nashville, Antioch, Tennessee. And to add to your update there with the Texas Bureau of Investigation now on the scene, they've got agents on the scene there, we are told, and they are providing assistance in this ongoing investigation. The aerial shots continue to change a little bit here. A moment ago, we continue to see students obviously outside of the school. A reunification process will eventually take place, but we're going to keep watching this and bring our viewers any update, Brett, as we get them there from Antioch, Tennessee. We'll be right back.
Take off your mask. Why don't you take off your mask?
Why don't you listen? I'll tell you why.
Maybe we could do it not during a class section.
I mean, you're here to learn.
Yeah,
right?
from the professor that I'm paying to teach me.
Okay, thank you.
Please leave.
Mass protesters burst into a Columbia class on Israeli history and refused to leave. It's renewed some Jewish students' concerns about the elite university's failure to shut down anti-Semitism on that campus. Let's bring in Shoshana Ofsian, is a freshman at Columbia University's Bernard College and Jewish Theological Seminary. Shoshana, thanks for being here. Your reaction to that protest, and just give us a sense of what it's like on campus for you.
To be honest, I'm livid right now. Yesterday's incident wasn't just an affront to basic human decency. It was a flagrant violation of students' civil rights. A mob of anti-Israel agitators physically impeded an Israeli professor from teaching a course on Israeli history. It doesn't get more dystopian than that. Protesters literally assembled on campus and chanted Globalize Intifada, called for violent resistance by any means necessary, and the ethnic cleansing of Jews from Israel. They then marched toward Broadway, where they joined forces with members of Within Our Lifetime, Unity of Fields, and the Revolutionary Communist Corps. And for the record, all of those groups should be designated as domestic terrorist organizations. They proceeded to block traffic, threaten the NYPD, and incite violence. And the protests violated every single tenet of Columbia's anti-discrimination, anti-discriminatory harassment policy. That's really the crux of the issue. It's that anti-discrimination policies are rendered obsolete when administrators refuse to enforce them. Columbia used to be a bastion of Western thought, and now it's overrun with terror apologists posing as activists.
You know, Shoshana, we've seen these flyers and graffiti on campus, and obviously Columbia has a history now of dealing with this. They put out a statement, the interim president, Katrina Armstrong, saying we strongly condemn this disruption as well as the flyers that included violent imagery. We want to be absolutely clear that any act of anti-Semitism or other form of discrimination, harassment, or intimidation against members of our community is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. So I guess the question is, are they doing enough? Quickly.
I mean, the university can't claim to have zero tolerance for harassment and intimidation while continuing to abet anti-Semites and terrorist sympathizers. Jewish students have been targeted and physically assaulted by members and affiliates of Columbia University Apartheid Divest, which is the primary anti-Israel coalition on campus. The university has never censured CUAD, and the onus of investigating cases and identifying perpetrators usually falls on grassroots organizations and activists instead of Columbia's Office of Institutional Equity.
Well,
Frankly,
Shoshana,
that's
we're going to follow this, and we really appreciate you coming on to talk to us about it. We'll follow up and see what the university is doing. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much
Sandra?
for having me.
All right, thank you, Brett. The Pentagon preparing to crack down on drug trafficking at the border with federal troops. Retired Border Patrol agent Thad Cleveland weighs in. Top of the hour.
In the last 24 hours, ICE arrested over 308 serious criminals. Some of them were murderers, some of them were rapists, some of them raped a child, some were sexual assault of a child. So ICE is doing their job, and they're prioritizing just as the president said they would.
The Trump administration wasting no time cracking down on immigration and border security, making hundreds of arrests in a matter of hours, sending active duty troops to our border and signing executive orders that demand dangerous drug cartels be classified as foreign terrorist organizations. Welcome back as America Report rolls into a second hour. I'm Sandra Smith in New York. Brett, great to have you here today.
Sandra.